Well, those of you who have been doing this with us for a while know that, yeah, this is such a great project, Community Food Systems at the Legislature. And I apologize. I think there's a couple people on the call who may not have been in the same room as me before, but my name is Lauren. I'm with Oregon State University, and I have a cold that my teenagers brought me home from high school. So my voice is kind of crummy. But fortunately, Andrew and I are co-leads on this, and there's a lot of material that's already been written up for this. So there's history around community food systems at the legislature as a project that we started in 2019. We talked a little about this at our big OCFSN virtual convening on November 13th. We have a plan written out, which is linked at the top of the notes, that folks who have been doing this a while all of this will be very familiar, but if you aren't familiar with what we do in this work, there's a whole plan here, and it says why we do it and what we do. And I always think it's really important to just start off with like the reasons why we do this. Really that OCFSN members who are active at the legislature will learn about the legislative priorities of other OCFSN members as well as external partners and organizations. And we hope that OCFSN members individually and in coalition will be successful with their legislative priorities. And that goes for our partners. And really, a really big important one for me is that more OCFSN member organizations will feel empowered to be part of changing state level policy through this legislative engagement as we go forward. Not all OCFSN member organizations focus on policy, either because it's not part of their theory of change or it's just not in their capacity. And we want more and more members to feel like they have power to influence this process. So there's a lot of information in our plan that are about the things that we do before the session starts, things we do like in January right before the session starts, things we do during the session, and some things we do after the session. We are feeling very fortunate that a new employee at ORCAN, Sophie Els, still has some time to work with us as an independent contractor to provide support for this project. We have had interns in the past through OSU, and then someone last year who ran straight through OCFSN. And this year, it's a hybrid. Andrew and I are both working with Sophie, and she's going to be on contract with me at OSU to support this group.
Great.
Hi, Sophie. Thanks for joining us. Want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Sophie Els, and am currently the policy associate for the Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network. And I'm excited to start working on this with Lauren and Andrew. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything about me.
Thanks, Sophie. And we're getting Sophie an OCFSN address so that it's really clear, when she's doing ORCAN work, she's doing ORCAN work. And then when she's doing this working group, she will be doing OCFSN supported work. Because ORCAN is like an advocate in its own right. It doesn't have to be tangled up with all this stuff. So this is great. Andrew, am I missing anything here at the start?
I think that covers it. Yeah.
Great.
And folks can go into the plan and get more details about, it's the same, what we've been doing the last couple of years. Not a lot's changed.
Yep. This year is a long session. So what we'd love to get folks' input on is we've looked at the legislative calendar, and there are things that are formally published as legislative calendar, and there are things that those of you who have been doing this work for a while know are important action points. But we'd like to know when we should be doing some important things like asking for bill names and numbers to include in our matrix and our bills to watch slides, when we should schedule the sort of OCFSN mini convening around the legislature that we've done in past years, after the session has started. And we usually do an end of session wrap up. This year it will be in July. I don't think we have to set the exact date now. Oh, we got to get the notes in the chat for Alice.
I got it.
You're at it. You're always right ahead of me on that. That's great. So, so we want to figure out that timing. We will want to just make sure everybody knows about the Small Farms Conference session. Andrew did already send that out by email, and we've got folks confirmed as speakers. And then we want to dig into the starter list. It's a pretty rich starter list that came out of the November 13th convening about what's coming. And what I wanted us to do is just kind of get in there together and read through it and try to highlight things that you know about that are happening, that things are going to be specific actual bills. But let's not do that yet. So once we get through those things, then we can spend the rest of our time on your updates about the session. I'll get to that later. So let's start out by when is a good time to start asking what are the bill names, what are the bills, what are the numbers, so we can start building out the matrix.
I can help with that, Megan. We should just look at when, my understanding is that we'll have, you can display Nelly too, but we'll have bill backs. So we've got right now they're called legislative, just to get everyone on the same page to help think through how we would answer this question. Right now we have what are called legislative concepts for some of our collective policy priorities. And those do not have the bill number. They have a number, but it's not the number that will be on the bill later. They're being, they've been requested to be filed, and they'll be coming back with a bill number, I believe, Nellie, if the day before, right around session start, right before, or day before session starts, or right around the day of session start. We could look at the calendar. So we should have our bill numbers and be able to summarize them within a couple days of start of session. Do you agree, Nellie?
I think so. The timing on that is not, I'm not 100% on that.
I had a conversation with Rep. Helm's office, and I can't remember what I was asking him. And I am pretty sure that was the case. So I think we could say January, that maybe someone would make the request of us that week of January the 21st. 20th?
Great.
The 20th is a holiday, I believe.
Yep.
And session starts on the 21st. So giving us a day or two after that so that we will have seen them ourselves, and then we would have maybe a week or so to get them in there, a couple weeks.
That sounds great. And we will be asking this group and then also reaching out to the whole membership to see what they know about. As I recall, in past years, there are some organizations of all y'all who look specifically for specific things you know are happening. And then some folks do a much bigger scan. I remember in past years, Thousand Friends used to do big scans because they expected ugly things to pop up here and there, and they really wanted to know what was happening. So I know that long scans are going to take longer than, yep, there's our bill. I see Craig nodding.
Yeah, so maybe a prompt around that time of the 25th-ish or whatever, and then that'll give us a couple weeks to get our act together for those of us who have lots of bills or policies.
Okay, great. Awesome. Unless anyone has anything to add, my next question is, when will it make sense to do, well, let me just step back and say, there are many different events that happen over the course of the session, and many of those things are lobby days or info sessions or whatever they are. for your organizations or groups of organizations for specific bills, for specific things. This group wants to help get the word out about those, make sure everybody knows about them. But we also want to do one mini convening partway through the session that goes out to the whole OCFSN distribution list. That is, here's what folks are working on. It's always been a combination of some short presentations about bills and opportunities for Q&A. And then we've always been able to build in some sort of how, like what can you do? What are the actions you can take? Where can you get more info? When would be a good time, do we think, during the session for that to happen as an OCFSN wide type event?
My input would be, this is Amy with the Oregon Organic Coalition, probably after the first chamber deadline, so you know what's actually still possible.
Right.
I'd love to chew on that together. That makes sense to me, Amy. And I was gonna suggest around the time of prepping for hearings, which would be before that deadline. So if we waited, we wouldn't be able to engage folks in submitting written testimony is probably how we'd engage folks, broader folks in the network. But I agree with you. Yeah, we don't need to be advocating for things that aren't going to move. Although there are a bunch, actually, I should note that there are a bunch of our policy priorities that I know are shared priorities for some of us here that are not probably going to move, even though they are going to need advocacy. They're not going to move because they're going to change paths and go into from a bill to a budget ask.
Right. It's sort of like I'm trying to imagine this giant mass of bills is coming in, and then some stuff happens. And then the thing that comes out is a bunch of stuff is left behind. Some things come out, but they look different. So do we want, I could see it both ways, like wait till it goes through that passage or weigh in for things that, like you said, for the hearings. Does anyone else have comments?
Through the passage, right?
Right. Any other ideas about this? Alice, do you have thoughts, or Greg?
The way that we're thinking about it is that the first chamber deadline is March 21st. That's the work session deadline for the first chamber. And I know that there are several lobby days, like the OCN lobby day is the 20th. I believe the Oregon Food Bank and Food for All Oregonians campaign is on the 10th. FOF's lobby day is on the 4th. There's a lot of lobby days in March right before leading up to that deadline. And I don't know if it makes sense for us to have the OCFSN like session overview kind of thing the last week of February to advertise all of our partners' lobby days and have those as like all of the ways to get involved. Because I think folks are positioning those leading up to the first chamber deadline. Or if we want to do what Amy Wong said and cut through the noise and just go with what's still alive after the first chamber deadlines. The actual first chamber deadline, like the end all be all first chamber deadline is April 9th. So my preference would be having this either the last week of February or after the first chamber deadline.
That's interesting.
First week of February is pretty soon.
Last week of February.
Oh, sorry, last week.
Last week
Okay.
of February.
Okay.
Well, think about it this way. So Small Farms Conference is just one audience. It's a big one, but not all. And that's February 15th. It could be that what we push out at the end of February is all the information that we collect about all the different lobby days and where you get a lot of info. And we push it all out to all of our members through our newsletter and our website and our email distribution list. And we say, go forth and learn about all these bills. And we ask them to all get engaged in what you all are doing on the ground. And then we actually have the mini convening after the first chamber deadline when we know more of what's going forward. So it's kind of a both and, knowing that it's what you had said, Alice. What I heard was it would be great to get folks together to get them excited about pushing forward, but that's what all of you are doing in your events. And I would love to push people out to your events. And we didn't get all those written down. You mentioned a whole bunch of them, Alice, but we will. What do folks think about that scenario where we do a big, get people out to events and get people to the lobby days, et cetera, and then we do a mini convening after that first chamber deadline?
I feel a little mixed about it, unsure. I'm not sure. We may, for example, I have an example here. The OCFSN Farmer and Rancher Disaster Resilience Grant had really great testimony and engagement in a hearing, which should have probably happened I believe it would have happened around February 2 years ago, which was when the Ag Committee was hearing the bill. We got feedback that the engagement of the OCFSN community was really valuable and very effective. And that would be both in person, virtual, and or written. And the only way to cheerlead for that, get people excited to engage. We have in this situation actually already a really great audience, really great kind of targets for that because we have grantees now. But if we do want to do that broader engagement of the OCFSN community, the opportunity for them to engage in a grassroots kind of way there's two ways, as Alice is pointing out, these lobby days to go meet with legislators, but they could also engage in the hearing, which, as we heard, was super impactful for this particular program in the past. And it is a really impactful way for folks to engage. Can be. Sometimes we're working on a hearing and we have all our people lined up and we don't need anyone else, and we just actually want our hand-picked favorite people to speak at our hearing. Sometimes we want to really engage a broader grassroots audience, and we always want lots of public comment, written public comment.
But
Thank
I mean,
you.
oh, sorry. I just wanted to say that we didn't use an OCFSN mini convening as the recruitment tool for that hearing that was so effective, though. I think that there's still a lot of value in like our internal coalitions and doing the recruitment from our action alerts for individual hearings. I worry that there are too many individual hearings for us to do it effectively in a convening, because then it'll be like, thank you for coming. Here's 15 things that you have to do right now. And that can be so overwhelming for folks that maybe we should be relying on individual or coalition action alerts for hearings versus like overall movement building that can happen at a convening.
Great. So,
Other thoughts on this? This is a great conversation. Thanks, Amy. Well, and please, anyone butt in if you have an idea on this, and I know there's other folks who are part of this working group who just couldn't come today. What if we have a hypothesis? It's Lauren misusing the word hypothesis. What if our hypothesis is that we do a big collaborative outreach push at the end of February to activate the membership to get involved in your lobby days and asks, and like not have an event, but really have a coordinated kind of, these are the things going on, these are the actions, so we can get all the folks from OCFSN mobilized with all of you saying how they can mobilize, right? And then we actually have an event that brings people together in April. And honestly, like, it wouldn't be that hard to just put together a office hours or come learn about the lobby, or here's a whole bunch of events and whatever, got questions about what that means, and we could just set a time where folks can show up, or rather than having to plan 2 whole mini meetings. But it sounds like at least there's some sort of outreach push near the end of February. And what we can do as a working group, and this is where, thank goodness, we have Sophie helping us, is to make sure we know about all of those different events and opportunities, and, like, what you should know, like what to know before you go, that kind of thing. That would seem like a good hypothesis. And then to do a mini convening after April 9th. We can still keep working on that, but that sounds like a good plan. Okay.
That's good.
Let's, we're not going to try to set a monthly meeting schedule for this working group, because we've had that gymnastics around that for the last 5 years, 6 years that we've been doing this. So we'll work on that offline, just trying to come up with some sort of regular check-in, knowing that not everybody can make it, and knowing when things heat up, those of you who are very actively lobbying at the legislature may not be showing up for any regular meetings. We're just going to stay in touch as much as we can. Megan.
I think that Fridays might be good days, because I know you didn't ask, but because
am
there's
asking.
no committee meetings in the first half of session on Fridays. No regular topical committee meetings on Fridays, because that's the day the Ways and Means Committee meets.
Perfect. Let's aim for that. Thank you.
At least that's been true in the past.
Excellent. Let's take a few minutes to jump into, we'll get back with you in the new year about small farms. The main thing for you to know is that it's on February 15th. I hope you're all coming anyway. And right now it looks like we'll be the 3rd session of the day. We'll get you exact time when I know it. It's after lunch, but we're getting the final matrix put together, and we should know ASAP. But we will know ASAP. Let's jump into that starter list from the convening. It looked like there was a lot of stuff that was repeated. That's in the notes. I see a lot of people popping in. I'll just put it here in the chat. But let's just take 5 minutes. I'll set a timer and go through there and highlight things that you can, what's actually a bill, or gonna be a bill, or an important appropriations issue.
Will you give us instruction again?
Okay. So here's a
how
whole,
it's a real thing.
yeah, what I would love to have out of this is, of all of these different things listed in these 6 pages, what are the things that are likely to be bills that we would be listing in the matrix and bills to watch? So,
Or funding priorities, right?
or funding priorities,
requests.
just highlight them.
Okay, is there an actual legislative thing?
Yeah, because sometimes when we have bigger policy discussions, people bring up things that they want to happen in the federal level or a local level or someday in the future. What's a thing that's actually going to show up as a bill or a funding ask in the 2025 Oregon legislature? And actually, it's really just the first breakout. It's not, I don't think anything came up in the part 4 breakouts. All right, we're almost at 5 minutes. Okay. Do we need more time or have we pretty much done it? This is so helpful. Mackenzie, you put something in here, the farm worker overtime adjustments to the rules. Um,
I just linked the from Oregon Worker Relief, a list of different policies for 2025. But agreed that Pakun is the best person to check in with around this farm workers disaster relief, but there's a couple other policies that are highlighted in that link.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought I heard something about on the farm side, some farm businesses were looking for some changes, but I don't know. We'll find out. So everything else, I see that there's some water things going on. But Alice, I think that's here under what you're working on, the small farm water access. I'm so surprised. Obviously, I haven't been tracking meat processing as closely as I used to. I thought we had a program and we had funded inspectors. So it's a little different.
We have a program. They didn't fund the inspectors because of the budget constraints of the 1% general funds thing. We can talk about it, but
Sure.
we've got a bit of file.
Okay. And there is going to be a bill around food waste recovery.
We can share about that in the next agenda item.
Okay.
We're talking about the different
Great.
rates, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, what we'll do, thank you for doing this. What we will do is, with Sophie's help, we'll go through and try to pull out everything from here. That would be like a bullet point in the matrix, and just so that we're ready for when we start to getting bill numbers and things like that. And then folks can go through here one more time and say, what did you miss? But this is very, very helpful. Okay. So, oh, here we go. Great. All right, let's move into member updates for the rest of the time. Megan, you want to start?
Sure. ORCAN's policy priorities for the 2025 legislative session are renewal of funding for the Natural Working Lands Fund, also known as the Natural Climate Solutions Fund, for technical assistance and financial incentives for natural working lands, including farms and ranches. The Oregon Community Food System, well, the Farmer and Rancher Disaster Resilience Grants, which are administered by OCFSN. Renewal of that funding. We're engaging with the coalition that's advocating for renewal of all 3 grant programs that are related, including we're focusing on the farmer and rancher piece. Other folks are engaging more on the grants for farmers markets and for food hubs. So we're a coordinated coalition on that. And our third policy priority is renewal of funding for the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, which I'm sure Nellie will speak to. And we've engaged a little bit in a proposed bill for composting food waste, reducing food waste. And I imagine that will be introduced as a bill, but I am not in those meetings. Sophie has been, so just tag that.
Who do you know who's leading that one?
Can you remember Osberg? Sophie?
Oh, Osberg. Right.
Osberg. In coordination closely with DEQ. requiring entities that create a lot of food waste to send that food waste to a facility to be composted rather than letting it go into the garbage and rot and create greenhouse gases. That's it for our priorities.
Cool. Awesome. Nellie, you want to jump in?
Sure. And I just want to say that Tara Olson's also on the line. She will be presenting at the Small Farms Conference, but our only priority is Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program. So looking at a $17.3 million ask for that program, with $14.5 million for matching dollars for working lands easements, and then the remainder for other programs and administration.
Cool.
And I just wanted to make sure with the document, was it just making sure that that information was in there? Did you need any? I missed the instruction and I had to jump out for a call, but in that document, what's coming in the 2025 legislature, did you just want us to make sure that the priorities were in there and highlighted?
I wanted to make sure there was a whole bunch of stuff in there, and
Mhm.
some of it was long-term wish list, and some of it was like,
Mhm.
yes,
Okay.
this is coming. And
Okay.
I just wanted to draw on this brain trust to tell us
Okay.
like what looked like, but it won't have everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
How about you, Alice?
Hi all. BOF is working on, we're generating 2 policies this go around. There are some links in the document to our landing pages, which we're hoping to use the same format that we used last long session and keep those landing pages as up to date as possible. The first is the state meat inspection program. They did not include dedicated FTE at ODA for inspectors and continuing service level. So we are asking for 2 FTE phased in over the next biennium for specifically inspector positions, and that FTE is supposed to be dispersed throughout the state where it is needed based on the investments that were made through the meat processing infrastructure grant funds that were put out in the last couple bienniums as well. So that one is going to be a committee bill in House Ag.
Ma, voy a irme ahorita.
Oh, hi,
Tengo la
Tia.
junta en mi teléfono.
Sorry. And yeah, I think that's all I have about meat processing. If you'd like to engage on that, let me know. The other thing that we're working on is revisions to the exempt well use code. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about this topic. We have been doing our due diligence, let me tell you, and we are very close to having final language. We filed a placeholder bill as a committee bill for Senate Natural Resources. We're very close to having actual language. It is very, very far from where we started. There's a lot of compromise that went into this proposal. And if you would like to be engaged on that and review the most recent language, please contact me and we'll be putting together we'll be updating all the folks who we've circled back with in the past on this. And yeah, I just haven't wanted to put out anything into the world that we would then have to retract. So we've been working very hard to get to language here. So, and we are also very, very supportive of many other bills that people are going to talk about today, including OAHP and the disaster resilience grant funds and Food for All Oregonians and Double Up Food Bucks, lots of things, but I'll let the people who are championing those talk about them. And I will be sending something out in January about partners at the FOF Day of Action at the Capitol. So watch out for that.
Thank you, Alice. Let's see. Rachel, do you want to talk about Double Up Food Bucks?
Sure. Hey, y'all. Don't have much to update. We're in the agency budget as far as we know. So we're just kind of hanging out and waiting. And yeah, I've been working with Megan and Alice also on the water package with the disaster resilience grant funds for OFMA, which FMF also gets a piece of for our growth grants. So not much to report.
That's great. Just, is it the DHS budget or the OHA budget?
DHS.
DHS. Cool. Let's see. Greg, how about you?
I'm sorry if I missed something there. I had to take a call. So we're actually, Thousand Friends is actually doing two bills this year to try to help some of the abuses that are going on around farmland being taken out of production. One is there are 7 ways right now to get houses on farmland. One of them is through what's called a replacement dwelling process, which is very deliberately easy and lacks very much review intentionally so that somebody whose house burns down or something, they can replace it easily. What's happening though, because the language of the law isn't very well written, is people are buying farms with a house on it, tearing it down, building a McMansion, taking it out of production, and then often putting some kind of a commercial establishment in that new so-called dwelling. So what this bill would do is basically you can still replace a house. There's a size limit on it, though. You can only increase it by a certain percentage over the current house that's there. So you can't replace something that was 1,500 square feet with a 5,000 square foot McMansion anymore through this process. But if somebody wanted to have a huge house on their farmland, there are still other ways to do it. Those pathways all still exist. This would just close down the loophole where there's very little to no review for that sort of thing. Our second bill is similar around what's called home occupations. People are allowed to have occupations in their homes, in farmland, in rural residential, in the city. I'm allowed to have one in the city where I am. But the language usually, the idea of a home occupation usually is that it's secondary use. It doesn't shift the use of the structure to the primary use being commercial. And again, the current law isn't very well written. People have been abusing that to get all kinds of things. And this would just dial it back so there's more consistent with what actually happens in other zones. You can still have a home occupation. It has to be primarily in the home. It can't, or other residential buildings on the property, and it can't become the primary use or change the nature of the property. And that's just being done by better definition. There are things that people are getting approved through this process, most of which there are other ways to get approved still, but people are finding they can't get them approved in the normal way, so they use this to get them approved, and this just shuts down that loophole. And there's lots of false information about both of these bills. These are both committee bills in the Senate Natural Resources and Wildfire Bill Committee. At the hearing the other day, people were claiming that they wouldn't be able to replace their house, or they wouldn't be able to have a farm stand, or this or that. All of those things are all false. They're not true. I encourage people to read the bills. We have LCs for both of them. And there'll be a couple of other bills that we will be supporting around land use. And there are a couple of things that we know that are coming out that we're worried about, but we need to see them before we get too hair on fire about them. So it's going to be a pretty active session. And for those who haven't heard yet, Jim Johnson from the Department of Agriculture retired earlier this year. He is now on our staff as our Working Lands Policy Director, and he will be in Salem representing us this year for these bills. So actually, Andrew, I meant to reach out to you because one or the other of us should probably be at the Small Farms Conference, but I didn't get my response back. So if that's still an option, I'd like to discuss that. Thanks.
Yeah, and I appreciate all that detail, Greg, and I think not on this call, but I think it will be important to figure out how those bills relate or don't relate to the administrative rule changes that not everyone that are being talked about right now because of those LCDC hearings and that whole process. I feel like I've heard a lot of things about what's gonna happen or not happen, and the more clarity we can bring, the better. And so I'm guessing a lot of that will get conflated, administrative actions, legislative actions, and So this would be a great place for us to sort of sort that out. Mackenzie.
Yeah, I can go. Mackenzie with Oregon Food Bank, our kind of primary piece of legislation that we'll be supporting and championing this year is Food for All Oregonians, so expanding SNAP to everyone, regardless of immigration status. I will say this year it's changed and it will be folks 0 to 25 and 55 and older. So it will be a scaled version of the bill. Yeah, also excited. We've got some bipartisan support in our co-sponsors this year, which is really, really great because of some of the organizing happening in Eastern Oregon. We'll also be supporting other priorities like school meals for all that other folks can speak to, but did want to mention we'll be supporting the immigrant rights package that has this farm worker disaster relief funding in it as well. So that could be worth tracking in this group. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Yeah, I think it will be so helpful for us to all get educated on what's in the immigrant rights package for like all of OCFSN. So thank you for bringing that. Aaron, what you got?
Hey folks, I don't see David here, but Melina's here, so I'll let her speak to farm to school, but I can talk a little about school meals for all. Yeah, introducing a school meals for all bill with Rep. Neron. Currently talking with her office because she's got a few different, there's the food waste bill is related. She's also I believe, the chief sponsor for that through Osberg. There's some interest in a food additives bill in schools that she's also entertaining. And so she's talking about potentially putting together like a school food policy package, essentially, as a way of marketing and framing for a variety of different legislators. But yeah, I think we had the legislative concept back for school meals for all, but there were some differences in the intent and the way it was actually written. So we decided not to pre-file, but should be getting that in with the updated concept in January. And I'll let Melina fill in any gaps that I might have missed there.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Okay, jump to Melina.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I came in halfway through, so I think I understand the homework, which is to look at that document and make comments or additions. Is that right, Lauren?
We did a quick scan to make sure that anything in that list that was going to turn into a bill or a funding ask was actually highlighted so we could keep track of it. And anything else that was for different levels of government or someday out in the future, we did not.
Okay.
So you could scan it, but otherwise, now we're just talking about your legislative priorities.
Cool. Well, I'm thrilled to share with you all that Farm to School was fully included in both agency request budgets and the governor recommended budget. So we are, I know, right, Megan? We're like never before.
Wow, for the first time. So
yeah, and it was current service level plus inflation. So it's like a little bump up. So we're super just thrilled to be in that position going into this legislative session. And we'll just start working with the legislators in their subcommittees of Ways and Means as appropriate. And additionally, we were approached by Rep. Gomberg to put together like a specific seafood to schools request and have we got the first legislative concept back and it was not at all what we had talked about. So they went back to work on it. And I haven't seen the latest iteration, so it hasn't been filed yet, but I've encouraged them to work with Rep. Neron as part of like a package if she's putting together a food in schools package. But it's essentially, it's a $750,000 request for technical assistance and product development, marketing and promotion and education related to seafood in schools. And the funding would be channeled to OCFA and ODA. So we'll see what happens with that. And then I'm, working with the School Meals for All campaign also, but Erin gave that update. So
very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Tania, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly because we haven't met before. Is it Tanya or Tania?
It's Tanya.
Tanya.
This is our first meeting with Rogue Foodie Nights, so we're just here listening and catching up and learning.
That's awesome. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I
Thanks
think
for having us.
Stu let me know that you and maybe another colleague would be joining the group, so I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
I think we got everybody. So there are a few things that in our effort to look at other, bills that are maybe related to our overall equity and justice commitments as a network that we may want to look at. I know that the Oregon Center for Public Policy has some things that it's working on. But those things can come up in the new year. We have like 9 minutes left, and I'm wondering if anyone has questions for anybody else. Yeah.
I do. I'm just thinking about what the purpose of our monthly check-ins might be. I'm guessing that that's just about a valuable time to to keep each other informed about what's going on with our bills, the status, and any needs for engagement or collaboration.
Yes, and I think the monthly meetings are an important place where folks who aren't always in the loop on this kind of work can come and learn. You've been involved with this from the very beginning, so we always have a bit of there's folks in the room who are thick into it and in the weeds and want to talk weeds. And there are folks who are like, we're really new to this. What does that mean? What does that mean? And we always try to find some sort of balance. But I think, those monthly meetings are definitely not where you would want to share really sensitive inside baseball because they're open. We rely on you all to create spaces for you to do that really sensitive work together. Yeah, so I think, and then some of it will be who decides to show up. But we really want to meet the needs of the people who are coming, and it's really about information sharing and that big goal of empowering folks to know what's going on and to get involved. I hope that helps as a starter outer.
I'm trying to think through whether I should attend them regularly or whether Sophie can represent ORCAM, but she'd be wearing two hats then, which could be tricky.
Yeah. I guess I should put my OSU hat on and say, once again, we're always going to have the statewide that's going to come up that includes the extension package and all those different things. So the OSU budget is definitely going to be a topic. And I suspect I will be coming to OCFSN members individually to ask for sign-ons for the statewide budget, unless something goes extremely awry and OSU is asking for something that we're all unhappy about. But I know our budget is in there, so it's useful to put there on the table. But we don't have the same kind of thing we had last year or the last few years when Amy and the Oregon Organic Coalition was pushing for new positions in OSU, which is a very different thing to get added. Great. Well, does anyone have any other questions? Because we can also give you a few minutes of your Thursday back. Sounds like a few minutes of Thursday. Thanks everyone for coming. I appreciate it. And we'll make a plan for the new year.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.